Well, hello everybody. Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan, Living Life with Purity. And today I want to sort of get back into what we were talking about the last segment about the end of Christendom in our world and where we go from here. So Archbishop Sheen had been talking about this in 1947, and I'm using a lot of his points in here because I don't think anyone can really say it any better than what he did. But you know, right now the world is being tested in a way that has never been before because of technology and the speed with which we exchange ideas in our world. And a lot of these ideas aren't necessarily facts, but they're more of talking points that certain people want to put out there to try to sway you and change your perceptions about things. Now, remember what I said before, the devil can change your perception about things. Same thing's going on with a lot of our media people. I don't think we have to ask a lot of questions to find out what their intentions are when we see the culmination of where their messages have gone over these last several years. And it seems to be ramping up even faster and faster. So now when Fulton Sheen was giving his warnings and his concerns, a lot of his concern was over the disintegration of the family units in our society and what goes with that, the elimination of the male influence in the family, the lack of development of the children, the lack of confidence and drive that comes out of these things, and basically the elimination of God from the equation and the insertion of the government and the authority as being the new God to these people. So we have to be very, very careful about what happens. Even Thomas Jefferson, one of our great founding fathers, had great concerns about the size of government when he said that any government large enough to give you everything you want is also big enough to take it all away. And this is where we're headed right now. It is very, very incredible the things that our people in government and around the world are getting together to try to how we are going to live and what we are going to think and how we are going to feel, and if we don't, we're going to be punished for stepping out of line. So we're in this battle. You can sit there and say, "Oh, I don't think so," but we're in it, and this is how the sheeple are moved around. They're basically told to sit down, shut up. I know what's better for you than you do. I get told that a lot. So one of the things that Fulton Sheen expressed, he says, you know, every now and then in history, the devil is given a long rope, for we must never forget that our Lord said to Judas and his band, "This is your hour." God has his day, but evil has its hour, when the shepherd shall be struck and the sheep dispersed. Yep, we're in that moment right now. So the Antichrist and this emergence of this, everyone's been looking for an individual, I think, to be the Antichrist, but I think that the Antichrist is going to be this ideology that is being promoted. There will be, attractive type people and voices that are going to promote this, celebrity types. People are going to be extolled, so much for their wisdom and all that goes with all these lauds, but they really haven't earned it. They've basically taken this rather than being given it as far as a power. One thing I learned back in poli-sci classes way back when is power is not something that's given to you. It's something you take. So think about that. Power is not something that anyone gives to somebody else. It's something that somebody else takes from somebody else to exert their power. And we have a lot of that going on right now. Sheen went on to say, he says, "We trembled not that God may be dethroned, but that barbarism may reign. It is not transubstantiation that may perish, but the home. Not the sacraments that may fade away, but the moral law. The church can have no different words for the weeping woman than those of Christ on the way to Calvary, when he said, weep not over me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. He saw the suffering that was going to be coming along. And even though that he knew that on that Good Friday that he would reign triumphant 3 days later, the path still had to be walked through. He still had to navigate these things. He still had to go through it. There's had to be this battle. And the same thing is happening for us. We have to carry our cross, and we have to be ready for the battle that's coming along. We have to unite ourselves with people in our community that are agreeable and will stand with us and are not going to be pushed over, like the weak tree that we were talking about the other day. The tree needs this tension, these stresses to make it stronger. We do too. We're being prepared for it. So let's not, take our eyes off of these things here. So there's always been Good Fridays, but there's always been Easters. So as we go through our path here, we're kind of in the midst of a Good Friday right now at the end of this 500-year decline. And so we're basically going through this death, if you will, but the resurrection that's going to come out of this is going to be amazing. So as bleak as things may seem right now, there's never been a stronger argument for Christianity in our world. What is happening right now with the emergence of the technology going around is you're also seeing people in other faiths are beginning to question a lot of the things that they've been told and they've held as truths. The Muslims are getting a lot of this. They're beginning to realize that a lot of the things they're being held to account on with public discussions right now, they're being held to account, and they're beginning to get a little bit more introspective about things and realizing, maybe we didn't have it all right. Maybe my mullahs were not quite, as open with us as they probably should have been. So they're getting a counter view to things, and a lot of times it's so entrenched, just like with anybody, they'll say, whatever it is, they'll say, but in time, if you let them go and don't pound them over the head with it, they're going to go back and reflect, and they're going to be, in those quiet moments saying, maybe that guy had something. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to look into this. And that's the turning point that we need. That's the key that fits in the lock and opens these things up. So right now, there's such a need for Christianity in the world, and men are discovering their misery and woes right now. They're realizing that their wars and their designs on accumulation of power and things like this have caused a direct increase with the neglect of Christianity, and the shutting down of God has led to a direct increase in evil and its manifestations in the world. But one thing we have going for us is that evil is self-defeating, while good is self-preserving in its design and in its nature. Who designed it that way? God did. So Sheen went on to say, he says, first, Christians must realize that a moment of crisis is not a time of despair, but of opportunity. The more we can anticipate the doom, the more we can avoid it. Once we recognize we are under divine wrath, we become eligible for divine mercy. And this is what we're looking for. It was because of the famine that the prodigal son said, I will arise and go to my father. The very disciplines of God create hope. So by keeping God in your daily life and your perspective, your telos, your goal, what you want to do for greatness. By keeping God as your goal and end, so much good comes out of that defeats the evil around us. And then the evil can't get to you, like I said before. If you don't give the devil a stage, he can't get up there and dance for you and try to show off. So I don't know if the devil can dance or not, but I'm sure he'd try if you give him a chance. there was another thing that Sheen offered in. He says, one of the surprises of heaven will be to see how many saints are made in the midst of this chaos and war and revolution. He points out that the great multitude standing before the throne of God and identified as these are the ones who have survived the time of great distress. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. When the stuff begins to happen and things are going on, you can't run, you can't hide, you can't fall away and think that it'll pass you by. When these things happen, you have to stand up and you have to stand tall. I said before, you have to stand up for purity. Our Lady's call to purity is in this moment right now. And Our Lady of America, when she asked for the purity of America's children to lead the world, this is what she's talking about. This is the moment. We're going to get through it. But we're going to have to probably think, in our family units and in our groups, our tribes, if you will. No matter what we want to do, we're basically tribal in our associations. But think about who it is that you hang with and how you go about your day and who you have that's going to be there if your time of need comes, or if you're going to be there if their time of need comes. Because we're all going to be relying on each other, because if we look on others in the system, there's going to be a price that goes with that. You're going to have to give up something to get something in that regard. And in situations like this, when there's an absolute, there's nothing to trade off except for your commitment. And there's no value. You can't use gold in these things. You can't give up property. What you have to do is you have to give of your heart so that you can have the same feeling that Our Lady's asking for us to have, this divine indwelling of the Holy Trinity. Sheen also talked to, in this broadcast he did, he called out to all Christians, Catholics, Jews, Protestants, all denominations, every name that you want to throw at this, that the world is serving your souls with an awful summons. The summons to heroic efforts at spiritualization. Catholics need to stir up their faith, put the reminders in their home, make sure they have their crucifix there, that they're praying together with their families, they're bringing other people in to pray with them, because this is how they're going to cement themselves in their tribal, if you will, thinking in their groups. Come together, not just inside the churches where you and go to mass or church or whatever it is, how you practice your faith, but in your homes, in your work life, everywhere about you. This element of purity to run in your life and in your day. Try to hang on to that, because there's the goodness, and that's what's going to keep bringing you back to your center line. Because there's always going to be distractions going to pull you out, and we're all part of it. We're not immune to the technology. I love the access that my phone gives me, but I try not to be married to it. But there's certain things that I can't do in today's world without it. I can't do this podcast and get this information out to you without the technology. So the technology isn't bad, it's how it's used that we have to be mindful of. So we're being urged to pray, but we're being urged to pray in a way that gets us over this crest in the hill that we're coming to. It's getting really tough to get up and over, because we can't trust a lot of the things that are told to us in our news cycle, and our politicians. Credibility is, whatever they say it is that day. But we need to pray, because the forces of evil are united. The forces of good are divided. We may not be able to meet in the same pew, but we can meet on our knees in the right places. And that will bring all of our voices to the one place, right before God, that he can try to help restore things for us here. Now, in turning to prayer, the only way out of this crisis is going to be through a spiritual path. Hammer blows are not going to do anything. Feather strokes is the way. We're going to have to set a strong example for ourselves, our families, and those who we circulate with. We need to make sure we keep our head up, our hearts strong. And Fulton Sheen was talking about the use of the St. Michael prayer. And he was saying this in 1947. Well, unbeknownst to him, about 9 years later, there was going to be another prayer that was going to be offered by Our Lady during one of the apparitions there in the chapel there in Rome City to Sister Millie. And in that instance, Our Lady gave Sister Millie 54 letters, 12 words that she said to remind her of and to pray each day. She said that this would actually be stronger than the prayer to St. Michael, because the devil cannot stand the presence of Mary, and especially to talk about the Immaculate Conception. And what she taught Sister Millie was these 12 words, which are 54 letters long. By thy holy and immaculate conception, O Mary, deliver us from evil. If you can only remember those words, 12 words, to voice out whenever something happens as a quick response to these things, I kid you not, you will find a calming influence will come over you immediately. I've done this for a number of years now, and it's helped out an awful lot. If anyone is noticing right now, there's no bird at the window throughout this podcast here I've been doing, and this is the first time in a long time there hasn't been a bird trying to bust in here. But I did before I came in here. I went to that window and I stood there and I said, by thy holy and immaculate conception, O Mary, deliver us from evil, and keep that damn bird away from the window today. So something worked. I'm happy. So there's a lot of things that he mentioned too that resounded around Fatima and what Our Lady had said then. And there's been more that's been added to the discussion since then. But at Fatima, Our Lady did say, in the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. And so what we need to do is, when I said the other day, we have to know where we're hitching our wagon to in these things. So right now, here's the wagon. Get hitched up to it and develop a plan. Get your people together. Talk about things. Don't be afraid. Keep your head up. Keep your eyes clear. Make sure you know what your telos is out here. Where's your goal? What are we shooting for? Let's make sure we have all these pieces of the pie put together here. We're going to get through this. But like I said, it's not going to be fun. And you're going to probably see some pretty argumentative and pretty mind expanding thoughts being thrown out here. And a lot of people are going to think, well, that's a pretty good idea. Be careful. Just be very, very careful. The rhetoric is being voiced in a way to entice you and to make you think that you didn't get your instruction quite right from your pastor or your reverend or whoever else you're going to see, or your mom and dad or whatever else you may have read. Be very, very careful. The devil is very, very creative at these things. I know Angel Gabriel is working very, very hard. He is a patron saint of all telecommunications. I pray to him to try to clean these things up and to make things that make sure the truth is told, and that people who are reading these lies out there come to the realization that not all they see or read is what the truth is. So we have an option there. So we pray that the Gabriel can keep the devil's influence at bay, and that people will tend towards the good that might be on the argument side out there on the internet, not the bad stuff. It's a big battle, but you got to start somewhere, folks. So let's start with, cleaning out our house, get rid of the garbage. Let's lighten our load. Let's find out who we are, and let's come to these decisions about this. We're going to make it through it. but we got to get ready for it. You got to get ready for it now. So I love you, and I'll be back.